You being a transaction analyst, what are your discoveries of your unconscious life plans?
Well, actually, that's a lifelong journey. I will always have unconscious aspects to my person, and hopefully, I will discover more and more and go on that journey. I'm not wanting that to stop. I'm 86 years old, and I'm thinking this is a real privilege because not everybody makes it and still is in a state where they have access to conscious and unconscious and not so conscious things and think about that and learn and so on. So I'm feeling privileged to
Hmm.
be allowed to be old and
Hmm.
still mentally and psychologically available.
Hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
but of course, I don't remember what I didn't know 50 years ago. But I know so much more now. But yes,
Hmm.
that's just I just know that I'm not the same person as what I was 50 years ago.
Hmm.
But I'm not saying that what I was 50 years ago was bad. It just wasn't yet as developed in many ways as it is now.
Hmm.
Yes. Mm.
It's an interesting aspect because this unconscious life plan, um, it's a lifelong journey. And one of the interesting perspective I read is about even what is unconscious. Um, Maybe Freud said it is unconscious, and everyone started saying unconscious, and maybe not even clear what is this unconscious sometimes.
Yes, yes. I think that talking about unconscious, I think that actually transactional analysis gives us a really good image of that, like the script, like the stuff that we engage in through our script is usually not from a consciousness. I mean, we may be conscious of what we're doing or what we're avoiding, but we may not be conscious of why we are avoiding it or doing it in this moment, which is something that is in the unconscious.
Mm.
Like, we may believe that we have to act brave at all cost,
Mm.
otherwise our life will be in danger. But actually, that may not be the truth, but we may believe that. It's important to discover that there is something else underneath, a vulnerability that is healthy and beautiful and worth exploring.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's true that Freud he brought that word in, and I think that was good. I think he did us a privilege by bringing that in, and then other theories make it a little bit more graphic or a little bit more tangible. And I think our transactional analysis is a good theory in that respect. I mean, take something like game theory or drama triangle, and you know that when you're acting in the drama triangle, you are not conscious of what the true, real motivation underneath is,
Mm.
but you're behaving in that way from a level of consciousness that may not be in your best interest.
Mm. Thank you, because these are underneath and they seek to come to surface, or even to know them. It helps to have some different options. That's what I
Yes.
also understand. And I'm curious a little more in this about, because script is a story, what is one of the fairy tale or something which influenced you and gave some insight about your own self through that. Is there something like that you have?
Would you be willing to repeat that question?
Is there a fairy tale or a story which is
Fairy tale or story, yeah.
which is near to your heart, which also helps you to know some of your unconscious process through that?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, there isn't.
Okay.
I never related to any of these kinds of metaphors or stories in a way other than maybe admiring real people, and maybe that has at times been a little bit of a deficit, like when teaching transactional analysis, and Eric Byrne did value the stories, the old Greek myths and mythology and all of that. He valued that very highly, but I never really related much to that. So I taught it when it was part of the curriculum, but not so much from inside out, but more like a textbook kind of a teaching. Yes.
Thanks for sharing this, because this gives permission to see script in different ways, and not necessarily everything need to be seen through this metaphor, because you said a very significant sentence, by observing real people.
Yes.
And I think that's so beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yes. Or maybe sometimes that wasn't such a good thing to do, but nevertheless, that was my experience. Yes. Yes. But it's true, that there are some deficits in my brain that I'm aware of. And maybe it's not even the deficit, it's just that it's different. For instance, I cannot conjure up a picture. So I cannot say to myself, see my mother. I cannot see my mother, or even Geethan. Now I see Geethan, but I couldn't before starting this say, okay, how about I see Geethan in front of me? I don't have that part is missing in my brain. So when I travel, like my husband, when we are in the car together and I'm driving, he said, after this curve will be a long straight road, and then you can pass this slow car. And when I come around the curve, I recognize this straight road, but I wouldn't have remembered it visually beforehand. So it's also kind of fun to know these differences that we have in the way our brains function. Not everybody functions the same. Some people function visually, auditorily, bodily, and in different frames of reference to know things or remember things or imagine things. So that's also something that by fairy tales or these kinds of stories, they have never really connected with me.
Okay. Thank you.